Ladies and gentlemen, students, thank you very much for coming for this roundtable in the Diplomatic Week, which Link Campus University is organizing, where we've been looking at various aspects of diplomacy, of foreign policy, and all the international affairs scene. Today we have a theme which has been described to me as rather hazy. It's called image projection and reputation management in the diplomatic arena. Of course, the last thing you want to have in image is haziness. We want to have as much focus as possible on the image of a country, on the reputation of a country, and should I say also of its diplomats. And to discuss this theme with us, we have a panel of very distinguished speakers. I have from my extreme right, and that is no view on his political views, from my extreme right, Professor Nabil Ayad, Director of the Diplomatic Academy of London at the University of Westminster. To my extreme left, and that is again not reflecting his political views, is Professor Copeland, Daryl Copeland, Senior Advisor in the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade of Canada. And on my right is Artis Pabriks. I wouldn't say an old friend of mine because that doesn't show in age. I would say a long-standing friend of mine who is also a former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Latvia, an academician, and also a member of Parliament. And on my left, His Excellency Zoltan Yechki. I hope I've pronounced that properly. I should be able to pronounce his Christian name, which is Ryszard.
It's Richard.
It's Richard. Former ambassador of Poland and president of the Cultural Foundation in Warsaw, and also head of the Institute of Diplomacy and coordinator of postgraduate studies at the Collegium Civitas, which is a private university of Warsaw. I would like to ask Professor Copeland to make his introductory remarks on the subject, image projection and reputation management in the diplomatic arena.
I've been off for a little over a year researching the future of diplomacy in the 21st century. And I would like to respond to the chairman's comment by trying to crystallize and catalyze some elements of image projection and reputation management around what I'm going to call in today's presentation the 5 C's. The 5 C's involve a code, a calculus, a candidate, a construct, and a critique. The backdrop for all of this, in a line, is this. In our wired and increasingly wireless world, sooner or later, all diplomacy becomes public. The code. I'm going to share with you the secret code that I distilled over my 1.5 years of study. And the secret code is this. IP plus RM equals PD. Image projection plus reputation management equals public diplomacy. Point 2, the calculus. The calculus is really the definition of public diplomacy, which is the sum of efforts, usually but not always, on the part of governments to achieve identified outcomes by connecting with foreign populations and influencing public opinion. Now, there's all sorts of ways that we can cut the public diplomacy cake, but at the end of the day, it always comes down to the pursuit of interests, promotion of policies, and the demonstration of values through engineering public and popular influence rather than using force or incentives to get your way in the world. What then are the candidates for public diplomacy? I'd like to start by eliminating 4 right off the top. Public diplomacy is not traditional diplomacy, which is the old statist model, which Professor Samantha Power describes in her recent book as the tyranny against which we're all struggling in the 21st century. It's not information or public affairs, which involves mainly the one-way flow of ideas and data outwards from embassies on the part of diplomats. It's not propaganda, which is information characterized usually by exaggeration or bias. And it certainly isn't psychological operations or information warfare. Well, if that's what public diplomacy isn't, what is public diplomacy? On the image projection side, my view, it has very much to do with branding on the one hand, and with lobbying, which I understand as a combination of advocacy and persuasion on the other. Reputation management is distinct from image projection. And reputation management has to do with adapting the tools and techniques of public relations to the needs of international goal achievement on the part of governments. It involves networking and contact management. It involves the building and maintenance of relationships. It involves active listening and dialogue rather than diktat or monologue. All of which is to say that reputation management has to do with meaningful exchange, and by meaningful, I refer to a two-way flow, not just of ideas and information, but of behavior. Effective public diplomacy not only affects popular outcomes in third countries, but if it's functioning properly, in my vision of public diplomacy, it also affects the behavior of the sending state, and this is absolutely important. The successful public diplomat will not only stand up for his country abroad, but, when required, to his country at home.